Okay, so we're going to conclude our study in Beowulf. I ran out of runway last time and realized that I didn't want to totally cut the end off it. So I'll take 10 minutes or so to conclude that study in Beowulf and the encounter with the dragon, which comes at the conclusion with it. I couldn't really leave the dragon out. So let me go to that here. And I think you can see it on the screen behind me. The discussion of this, and the note that the description here is interesting by Heaney in the gloss, that it had been hidden in the earth house, namely the earth, by the last survivor of a forgotten race. So it's ancient history itself, how the treasure that the dragon guarded had been where it was, and death had come and taken them all in times gone by, and the only one left to tell their tale, the last of the line, could look forward to nothing but the same fate for himself. He foresaw that his joy in the treasure would be brief. Comment here by the Gawain author on the I'm thinking the next work, the author of Beowulf, on the fleetingness of the world's knowledge, even of ancient things, and that in the midst of our worldly understandings of things, that there's a story that underlies these stories that makes sense and connects the stories that are told disparately, namely that of the fight between good and evil, which he's been recounting in Beowulf thus far. So there is a newly constructed barrow, which is a burial place, and the barrow keeper gives a speech, which I'm skipping over here, and we'll come to the dragon itself. That is unbeknownst to the constructor of a new grave site, actually residing beneath that even. So it's like there's a malice that has been asleep beneath the earth, and by digging down, it digs too deep. It's a lot like the story in the Lord of the Rings of the dwarves digging too deep and too greedily, and they come across something that they did not expect or to encounter, and yet was there. So pick it up here. Then an old harrower of the dark happened to find the hoard open, the burning one who hunts out barrows, the slick-skinned dragon, threatening the night sky with streamers of fire. People on the farms are in dread of him. He is driven to hunt out hoards underground, to guard heathen gold through age-old vigils, though to no avail, to little avail rather. For 3 centuries, this scourge of the people had stood guard on that stoutly protected underground treasury, until the intruder unleashed its fury. He hurried to his lord with the gold-plated cup and made his plea to be reinstated. Then the vault was rifled, the ring hoard robbed, and the wretched man had his request granted. His master gazed on that fine from the past for the first time. When the dragon awoke, trouble flared again. He rippled down the rock, writhing with anger, when he saw the footprints of the prowler who had stolen too close to his dreaming head. So may a man not marked by fate easily escape exile and woe by the grace of God. And the dragon awakes, and he starts wreaking havoc on the same people that had been besieged 50 years before by Grendel and Grendel's mother. And Beowulf is given the news of the dragon and what the dragon has come, and he is brought back to remember what had been said to him about the ways of the world and the ease of the world, and the way in which evil slowly lurks and creeps up on a man, so that even good men over the course of time are corrupted by luxury and ease. And we picked up this last time, and I mentioned to you the fact that he trusts in fate. I think that's where I left off here. And the difference between Beowulf of the past and Beowulf uh, when he was the man who was a warrior, and Beowulf now the king 50 years later, is that Beowulf now no longer seems to trust in God, he trusts in fate. I'll give all the account of his days and so forth. And he says, in defiance of the dragon, I scorn further words against this sky-born foe. Men at arms, remain here on the barrow, safe in your armor, to see which one of us is better in the end at bearing wounds in a deadly fray. This fight is not yours, nor is it up to any man except me to measure his strength against the monster or to prove his worth. I shall win the gold by my courage, or else mortal combat, doom of battle will bear your lord away. Then he drew himself up beside his shield, the fabled warrior in his war shirt and helmet, trusted in his own strength entirely, and went under the crag. Now, note that there is no deliberate, conspicuous comparison by the narrator here. It's up to the reader to recognize that there's a difference that has happened within Beowulf that changes, and it's not just a matter of 50 years. It's not just the difference of being a warrior versus a king. It's a man who has lost, now trusts in his own strength. It's a significant departure in character. And it's rather different than even the great King Hugelac, who at least had some sense of hope in a power beyond himself. Maybe because he had no ability to even trust in his own strength. But in some senses, he was in a better state than Beowulf, who is deceiving himself and thinking that it's his unique abilities that has given him the victory thus far. Anyway, he drew himself up beside his shield, the fabled warrior in his war shirt, trusted in his own strength entirely, and went under the crag. No coward path, says the Beowulf poet. Hard by the rock face, that hale veteran, a good man who had gone repeatedly into combat and danger and come through, saw a stone arch and a gushing stream that burst from the barrow, blazing and wafting a deadly heat. It would be hard to survive unscathed near the horde, to hold firm against the dragon in those flaming depths. Then he gave a shout. The lord of the Geats unburdened his breast and broke out in a storm of anger. Under grey stone his voice challenged and resounded clearly. Hate was ignited. The horde guard recognized a human voice. The time was over for peace and parleying. Pouring forth in a hot battle fume, the breath of the monster burst from the rock. There was a rumble underground. Down there in the barrow, Beowulf the warrior lifted his shield. The outlandish thing writhed and convulsed and viciously turned on the king. Roused to a fury, each antagonist struck terror in the other. Unyielding, the lord of his people loomed on by his tall shield, sure of the ground, while the serpent looped and unleashed itself. Swaddled in flames, it came gliding and flexing and racing towards its fate. It's a bit like Gandalf and the Balrog. A little bit of that sort of sense of it. But his shield defended the renowned leader's life and limb for a shorter time than he meant it to. That final day was the first time when Beowulf fought and fate denied him glory in battle. So the king of the Geats raised his hand and struck hard at the enameled scales, but scarcely cut through. The blade flashed and slashed, yet the blow was far less powerful than the hard-pressed king had need of at that moment. Beowulf was foiled of a glorious victory. The glittering sword, infallible before that day, failed when he unsheathed it, as it never should have. For the son of Ecthio, it was no easy thing to have to give ground like that and go unwillingly to inhabit another home in a place beyond. So every man must yield the leasehold of his days. And we find that not only does he fail, but his companions all abandon him. The men that were there to be beside him in battle, they've all fled, except for one. Within one heart, sorrow welled up. In a man of worth, the claims of kinship cannot denied. His name was Wiglaf, a son of Weostan's, a well-regarded Shilfing warrior related to Alfhere. When he saw his lord tormented by the heat of his scalding helmet, he remembered the bountiful gifts bestowed on him, how well he lived among the Waymundings, the freehold he inherited from his father before him. He could not hold back. One hand brandished the yellow-timbered shield, the other drew his sword, an ancient blade that was said to have belonged to Eanmund, the son of Othere, the one Weostan had slain before he was in exile without friends. So again, a famous sword is wielded on behalf of this, and that sword, which was bequeathed as a legacy, now comes to use. Again, there's something that's being said about the relationships of generations to other generations and the trophies of victory from one generation being useful to the next generation. There's something about culture, intergenerational culture. It's not every generation needs to fight from ground zero. There's a legacy that gets passed on in story and in culture and in technology. And Wiglaf berates those that have betrayed him, goes to Beowulf's aid, and there are 3 onslaughts of the dragons, and in the end, Beowulf slays the dragon. Line 2702. Once again, the king gathered his strength and drew a stabbing knife he carried on his belt. Sharpened for battle, he stuck it deep into the dragon's flank. Beowulf dealt it a deadly wound. They had killed the enemy. Courage quelled his life. That pair of kinsmen, partners in nobility, had destroyed the foe. So every man should act, says Beowulf, poet. Be at hand when needed. But now, for the king, this would be the last of many labors and triumphs in the world. Then the wound dealt by the ground burner earlier began to scald and swell. Beowulf discovered deadly poison suppurating inside him, surges of nausea, and so in his wisdom the prince realized his state and struggled towards a seat on the rampart, steadied his gaze, and now that thane, unequaled for goodness, with his own hands washed his lord's wounds, swabbed the weary prince with water, bathed him clean, unbuckled his helmet, and knew, of course, Beowulf, that he's about to die. So I'll read his final speech. Now is the time when I would have wanted to bestow this armor on my own son. Had it been my fortune to have fathered an heir and live on in his flesh. For 50 years I ruled this nation. No king of any neighboring clan would dare face me with troops. None had the power to intimidate me. I took what came, cared for and stood by things in my keeping. Never fomented quarrels, never swore to a lie. All this consoles me, doomed as I am and sickening for death. Because of my right ways, the ruler of mankind need never blame me when the breath leaves my body for murder of kinsmen. Go now quickly, dearest Wiglaf, under the dark gray stone where the dragon is laid out, lost to his treasure. Hurry to feast your eyes on the hoard. Away you go. I want to examine that ancient gold. Gaze my fill on those garnered jewels. My going will be easier for having seen the treasure, a less troubled letting go of the life and lordship I have long maintained. Stop there. What's going through Beowulf's mind as he passes from this mortal life? Riches. He wants to look one last time on the precious jewels, the precious treasure in front of him. You have to read into the text here. The Beowulf author is not denigrating his hero. He's not commenting on the fact that Beowulf seems to be less theistic in his understanding of things. As he gives in to evil, he seems to himself have become more evil. Somebody said last time he's a bit more like a dragon. I think there's something there in that. Evil is sort of gnawed away at him. It's lost something of his essence. You know, in the Lord of the Rings, where it talks about the fact that Frodo, where he's put the ring on, there's a faintness about his finger as if and every time he puts on the ring, he seems to be entering more into the realm of shadow. That's his being losing something of its goodness as evil preys upon him. He's being diminished here. So I think that's in this account as well. I think it's very subtly read by Tolkien. I think that's here in this as well. Why on earth would he want to look on the gold at the end? What a strange thing. He's talking about his legacy and all of the good things, and yet he can't get out of his mind the gold which he's fighting for. Who cares about the gold? Certainly not a dying man, and yet that's what he's thinking about right at the end here. And so I have heard, the son of Weohstan quickly obeyed the command. He took him there and so forth. And then there he returns with the treasure, and Beowulf gives thanks and orders for the construction of a barrow to commemorate him. And they then do exactly that. They will commemorate him. They will bewail him. And then in his last words, he will speak. You are the last of us, the only one left of the Wegmundings. Fate swept us away. Sent my whole brave, high-born clan to their final doom. Now I must follow them. He's just like the pagans of old. He dies. He sounded like he believed in something greater at the beginning when he was a warrior, fought against evil, and now he sounds just like yet another pagan who's going to die without any heirs. There'll be a mound, just like the mound he's uncovered, and there might be gold in there, but still there's a sense of the futility of human life in all of this. Now I must follow them. This was the warrior's last word. There was no more to confide. Dragon's been destroyed, and the battle dodgers, the oath breakers come back. Wiglaf rebukes them for betrayal, treachery, as you would expect in the Anglo-Saxon warrior code, and predicts the enemies will now come and attack the Geats and destroy them. The only one left standing who might be able to resist them is Wiglaf himself. But the race of men has failed. There's no honor left. There's no goodness left in men to resist the evil that will come. And the Geat kingdom is almost doomed, and he foresees wars with the Franks and the Frisians, which will come. In the 5th century, they will come across, and the Britons will be overcome by the Anglos and the Saxons. And so there's a sense here of doom at the end and a tragic future that will come. So a sense very much of pessimism at the end. It's very much a part of the Nordic spirit. A sense of like, if you, and like just even the Marvel comic books, Ragnarok. In the end, victory will not come to the good. There's an inevitable defeat at some point. We can resist wickedness for so long, but ultimately evil will win. It's very much of a different spirit than we see in the Greco-Roman world, with its messianism and its sense of victory on the horizon. There's very much of a dark and pessimistic spirit, which Tolkien loved and is so much part of the 19th and 20th century mood, I would say. Any comments or questions before I move on to Sir Gawain and the Green Knight? It's meant to be sad. It's meant to be sad, and yet there's a sense of greatness there as well. And died nobly, gave his life to preserve his people, and yet lost his people in the end, and even lost himself in the process. The corruptions of the world. I mean, it's a terrific portrait, and a very probably realistic one, of the corruption in the human heart even. It's not saying the battle's not real and the battle's not legitimate and that evil doesn't need to be fought. It needs to be fought. But the problem is that evil isn't only outside of us, it's within. That sense, and doom will come. That's very much of the Nordic Anglo-Saxon mood, if you will. And in the midst of that, the gospel comes and will transform the Anglo-Saxon culture as well. But we'll maybe look at that in a second here. I think that's probably